Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Pleasure to be able to be standing here to witness an academic event. It's an event that is really important for us, and I'm told it's an inaugural event. We're doing this for the first time, and there are always challenges when you do things for the first time. But alhamdulillah, I'm delighted that you have attended in reasonably good numbers, which is rahmah. It is very welcome. But more importantly, I want to appreciate the presence of the Pakistani ambassador to Tanzania, and who is going to give us this lecture of today. As you know, it takes a lot of effort for somebody to travel from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro. Nowadays with SGR it's about 1 hour 40 minutes, but he came by road, which is an average about 5 hours. And it is not easy. A lot of us will avoid travel like that, but he has chosen not to avoid that travel, to come to Morogoro, to see us, and permit this gathering that we're going to be having this afternoon. So for me, it's just to say my pleasure at this event being made possible. It's made possible by the two of us, the Muslim University of Morogoro, creating the event, you yourselves being present here, making the audience, and our ambassador for being available today to deliver the lecture of Iqbal, which is extremely important for us. And other than that, I don't have anything to say, and that should serve as our opening remarks. And I want to wish you all the best. Pay attention, listen attentively, and whatever lessons we can learn, we need to learn the lessons, and then inculcate that in our behaviors, our attitude, to make sure that we improve our lives as we move forward, because that is the requirement of us as Muslims. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Mimi ni mmoja katika wanafunzi wa aliyekuwa shekhe wetu, profesa wetu Muhammad Malik, ambaye alikuwa ni Mpakistani, na vijana wengi, tulikuwa vijana wengi wakati huo, baadhi yao wapo hapa, kina Profesa Hamza Njozi. Haya mawazo au hizi harakati za Uislamu mpaka kufika hapa tulipo leo, ilikuwa ni kutokana na mafundisho ya Profesa Muhammad Malik, ambaye amefariki mwaka 1991. Sasa yeye Sheikh Muhammad Malik alikuwa, kabla hajaja Tanzania, alikuwa Port-Louis, Mauritius. Huko alikaa kiasi miaka 10, na kila mwaka alikuwa anasherehesha hii siku ya Muhammad Iqbal, ambayo ni tarehe 9 Novemba. Na mwaka 78 ndio aliandika makala yake ambayo inaitwa The Message of Iqbal. Sasa hii ndio itakuwa mazungumzo yangu kwa ufupi. Sinto kitaja au sitokisoma kitabu chote. Sheikh anasemaje? Sheikh Malik anasema ni fikra iliyoenea kwamba lengo la sanaa. Haya sasa ni maneno ambayo ana nukuu Muhammad Iqbal. Hii fikra iliyoenea kwamba lengo la sanaa si jingine bali ni kufurahisha, na kwamba haina ujumbe wowote wa kufikisha. Wanaoshikilia fikra hii wanadai kuwa kuipagaza sanaa na ushairi mzigo wa kufikisha ujumbe ni kuidunisha kufikia kiwango cha kuhubiri au propaganda. Kauli mbiu yao ni kwamba sanaa iwe kwa ajili ya sanaa. Muhammad Iqbal alitumia sanaa kufikisha ujumbe wa Uislamu. Iqbal anasimamia kidete hoja kwamba si ushairi pekee bali sanaa jamali kwa ujumla ni yenye thamani na muhimu pale tu inapoongeza kina cha umaizi wa mtu kuhusu mahusiano halisi ya maisha na kumshajiisha kufikia viwango vya juu vya maadili. Hapa kuna ubeti ambao umetoka kwenye kitabu chake unaitwa Dharbi Karim. Anasema hivi: enyi watu wenye ruya, ni vizuri kuwa na jicho lenye kuthamini vizuri, lenye kuthamini uzuri, lakini jicho lisiloweza kuona uhalisi wa vitu limetindikiwa uoni. Lengo la sanaa ni kumjasirisha mtu kuwa na hamu ya uhai wa milele. Ni kitu gani haya maisha ya mpito ya mpumuo mmoja au miwili? Ni sawa na mfano wa chumo la ulimi wa moto unaomemetuka. Lulu isothabani ni kama ile kauli isiyoweza kuhemua moyo au mto kufurika. Hichi ni kipande kimoja ambacho katika maandiko ya Iqbal. Tukienda kwenye mfano wa pili, katika shairi mahususi kwa wanafunzi wa Chuo Kikuu cha Aliga baina ya miaka 1906 1908, Iqbal anasema hivi: ujumbe wangu ni tofauti na ujumbe wa wengine. Mithili ya yule aliyepagawa na maradhi ya mahaba, ambaye hubwabwaja kivyake. Yaweza kuwa umeshawahi kusikia nyimbo za ndege tunduni. Sasa hebu sikiliza nyimbo za ndege yule aliyetulia juu ya paa la nyumba, pakiashiriwa shwari na utuvu wa kilima. Amani na pumziko ndiyo siri ya maisha, lakini kidudu kipole chaweza kumpa dokezo mshairi kwamba burudani ya kutembea ni bora kuliko pumziko. Sasa haya maneno ya Iqbal yanahitaji mtu kutulia kuyatafakari. Ni ushairi wa hali ya juu na ndio lugha ambayo alikuwa akitumia. Sasa kwa haraka kwa sababu muda niliopewa una karibia kuisha au umekwisha, nichukue neno la mwisho ambalo Sheikh Malik anatuhusia. Kwanza kaanza na ubeti wa Muhammad Iqbal ambao unasema, mashariki kuiga magharibi ni kuidhulumu dhati yake. Mashariki haina budi kuifanyia magharibi tathmini ya kina. Nguvu za mataifa ya magharibi hazitokani na minenguo ya mabinti zao wachezapo utupu, wala nguvu zao hazitokani na upagani wao, wala maendeleo yao hayatokani na matumizi ya maandishi yao kwa lahani ya Kilatini. Uwezo wa mataifa ya magharibi unatokana na sayansi yao na elimu yao. Taa zao zinawashwa na nuru ya sayansi yao. Mtu yoyote aliyewahi kutafakari juu ya majaribio kadhaa dhaifu yaliyofanyika kwa lengo la kurekebisha yaliyofanywa na wasanii wenye uoni mfinyu wa elimu ndogo katika nchi kadhaa za Kiislamu, anaweza kwa urahisi tu akatathmini hekima ya ushairi wa Iqbal. Ni yule tu aliyebobea katika usomi ambaye anafahamu ni kwa malengo yepi vipengele kadhaa katika mfumo wake wa kuishi ni nyenzo za lazima. Yule mwenye uoni mpana wa manufaa halisi ya maisha, ambaye kwa juhudi hiyo hufikia uwezo wa kupenyeza katika maneno.
My friend here apologized that he is speaking in Swahili, but I have to apologize because unfortunately I can't speak Swahili, so I have to speak in English. I'm honored to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me. I also wish to convey my gratitude to the university for organizing this ceremony today to honor the life and works of Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, one of the greatest poets and philosophers of Urdu and Persian languages. Over the years, a lot has been said and written about Dr. Iqbal's poetry and his philosophy. There is so much to say about his life, his messages, and his achievements. I will, however, try to focus on a few aspects of Dr. Iqbal so that my speech is not too long. A philosopher, poet, and visionary, Dr. Iqbal left an indelible mark not only on the cultural landscape of the Muslim world, but also on the broader intellectual heritage of humanity. His ideas and poetry continue to resonate, offering timeless messages of self-awareness, dignity, and the pursuit of a just and meaningful life. History provides ample evidence that some individuals, no doubt exceptional ones, have changed the course of history. In the 20th century, several leading figures emerged in the Muslim world whose thought and life struggle changed the course of history in profound ways. Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, also called as Allama Iqbal, Allama is a scholar, is one such figure. He was born in Sialkot, currently in Punjab province in Pakistan, on November 9, 1877, and he passed away on 21 April 1938. He is widely and rightly recognized as having inspired the idea for the creation of the state of Pakistan. While he did not live to see his dream come true, unfortunately, he set the Muslims of British colonial India on a course making them aware of their distinct identity. While educated in the West and carefully studying its foundational philosophy and ideology, Dr. Iqbal came to reject both. Instead, he gave a different message to the Muslim masses in British colonial India. It was rooted in the values and principles of Islam and based on the Sunnah and Seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Iqbal's philosophy and poetry were deeply influenced by the circumstances in which he grew up. Dr. Iqbal opened his eyes in a grim period of Muslim history, especially in colonial India. Muslims had ruled India for nearly 1,000 years. With the arrival of the British, they were displaced from their previous role and cast into subjugation. By the middle of the 19th century, large parts of the Muslim world had gone into the belly of the... This one? Okay, thank you. By the middle of the 19th century, large parts of the Muslim world had gone into the belly of the colonial beast. Colonialism affected the Muslim world in profoundly negative ways: political, economic, cultural, and intellectual. This onslaught also resulted in resistance movements emerging to reclaim their rights. But such movements were either isolated or largely nationalist in nature, reflecting the deleterious impact colonialism had on Muslim political thought. The Hindus, as India's majority population, realized that the British would eventually leave and they would automatically inherit power. Aware of this eventuality, the Muslim leadership in British colonial India struggled to safeguard Muslim interests by working with the Hindus. Initially, few Muslims realized that it was a forlorn quest. It was Allama Iqbal who first realized that for Muslims to live a dignified existence, they must have a separate homeland. This was not based on emotions or ethnic chauvinism. Iqbal had arrived at this conclusion after a deep and profound study of the prevailing situation in India. Iqbal's poetry and prose, despite their philosophical content and tone, are overtly political. This can be attributed to the political environment of British India in the late 19th and the first half of the 20th century. Any intellectual of that period, whether Hindu or Muslim, could not help but join the struggle for freedom in their respective capacities. Ladies and gentlemen, when nations and states lose their authority, questions about their philosophy of life start emerging. The same thing happened in the subcontinent after the downfall of the Muslim authority and the advent of the British rule. A number of schools of thought emerged and gave their own interpretations of Islam. In these schools of thought, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, from 1817 to 1898, and the religious scholars who opposed him were prominent. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan established an educational institution at Aligarh to promote his interpretation of Islam. The religious scholars who opposed Sir Syed Ahmad Khan also established educational institutions to promote their ideologies. Darul Uloom Deoband was one such institution. This institution was established by Maulana Muhammad Qasim Nanotri. In the new and changed circumstances, these two schools of thought were presenting conflicting interpretation of Islamic thought. A bit later, Iqbal was going to be the connecting point of these two different ideologies. Iqbal, though educated in the Western institutions, did not break away with his own tradition. Iqbal's moderate approach to owed its development to his vast objective reading of both sides and his concept of history. Iqbal has examined history from a scholarly and a philosophical angle, which resulted in the development of a moderate concept of history as well as religion. This approach resulted in the development of a balanced, moderate concept which was lacking in his contemporaries. He entered practical politics in 1926. He contemplated his pan-Islamism with territorial nationalism in the subcontinent's context. After elaborating the basic postulates of Islamic ideology and its relevance to individual, society, and mankind, he turned his attention to the Indian Muslims who were simultaneously menaced by the British imperialism and the danger of permanent Hindu domination. Caught in the waters of Indian politics, therefore, the basic problem of Indian Muslims was how to regenerate their individual and collective selves and preserve their Islamic identity. Iqbal considered Muslim community as a separate nationality, and he wanted first full autonomous status in the Muslim majority area and later an independent line of action from the Congress. His presidential address of 1930 at Allahabad is famous in this regard. He said, "I would like to see the Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province, Sindh and Balochistan amalgamated into a single state. Self-government within the British Empire or without the British Empire, the formation of a consolidated Indian Muslim state appears to be the final destiny of Muslims, at least of Northwest India." However, for Iqbal, the establishment of a Muslim state in the Indian subcontinent was not an end in it by itself, but it was a means to achieve a higher goal, consolidation of the world, or as he called it, millet. For the realization of this dream, he emphasized 2 points. First, he instilled in Muslims a sense of separate identity. Second, he revived their self-confidence that they had lost once they lost political and economic power to the British. Iqbal's poetry is the soul of his legacy. He is often called Shair-e-Mashriq or poet of the East. because his words echo the collective aspirations of the Muslim world and indeed all of humanity. Writing primarily in Persian and Urdu, his poetry transcends borders, speaking to universal themes of identity, faith, and freedom. Iqbal's verses were not just an artistic endeavor, it was a call to action. Through masterpieces like Shikwa, which was a complaint to Allah, and Jawab-e-Shikwa, which was a response or answer to the complaint by Allah, he expressed both the frustrations of the Muslim world and his hope for its rejuvenation. He was not content to mourn past glory. His words were designed to inspire and energize. He wanted Muslims to rediscover their lost heritage, not through nostalgia, but through a renewed commitment to knowledge, self-determination, and unity. Central to his poetic philosophy is the concept of khudi, which can be called as selfhood or self-esteem, self-confidence, soul. Iqbal saw self-realization as the cornerstone of progress. Khudi is not selfishness, but the realization of one's divine potential. It is the driving force behind human achievement, and for Iqbal, it was essential to reclaiming the dignity and strength of the Muslim world. He encouraged individuals to break free from complacency, to strive for greatness, and to reach for higher goals, both spiritually and materially. According to a famous Pakistani scholar, Dr. Israr Ahmed, the philosophy of Dr. Iqbal's khudi or secret self is based on verse 19 of Surah Al-Hashr of the Holy Quran. The English translation of the Quranic verse is as follows: "And be not like those who forgot Allah, and He caused them to forget their own selves. Those are the fasiqun, rebellious or disobedient to Allah." The concept of khudi was initially presented through Iqbal's poem Asrar-e-Khudi, which means the secret of self. However, it is conveyed fully in his work, The Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam. Afterwards, he continued to further develop this concept in his Urdu poetry and prose. His poetry carried forth his ideas of a free and just society that comprised of morally and intellectually strong individuals. He highlighted his cultural and religious identity as resistance in his anti-colonial struggle against the British. Iqbal's poetry is representative of his efforts to raise them from a state of submission and rekindle hope for a free future. His concept of khudi cannot be understood outside of the times in which he lived, thought, and wrote. A few decades before his birth, Muslims' war of independence swept through India. By then, the Indo-Muslim community had decayed, was impoverished, and had lost all incentive. Indian Muslims had fallen to the notion that their loss of freedom and sovereignty was the will of God, a divine plan. They had given up any aspirations to freedom, thinking that no matter what, God did not want them to be in power. So by introducing the concept of khudi, he attempted to activate his otherwise dormant nation. Asrar-e-Khudi starts with three very well-known couplets of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, the famous Persian scholar and poet. Dr. Iqbal gets inspiration of constant struggle and search from Rumi. Knowing yourself is basically discovering the self. It is basically to become selfless and courageous. Knowing the self is fundamental to obtain the holistic meanings of life. Iqbal proposes man to create in himself the attributes of Allah. Man is in designed state of creation is basically to evolve his life and undertake self-affirmation through the consistent struggle of seeking and advancing in khudi. Dr. Iqbal's concept of self is essentially based on constant struggle. Continuous movement is the sign of life of this universe, which stands true for mankind as well. In one of the couplets of Bale Jibreel, which means the angel Jibreel's or Gabriel's way, he goes on to say, translation, the entire galaxy as part of this universe is in motion. The stars make their motion even faster as the heart of every particle is holding a roar of internal struggle among them. That is the internal instinctive act of restlessness. The ever-sustained and faster movement of stars as part of the complete cosmic system is the sign of life. It reflects a lesson to the human beings that constant motion is a manifestation of living. Iqbal used poetry as a vehicle to deliver his message. This was a very effective means to create awareness among the demoralized Muslims, since poetry was extremely popular as a form of public engagement and entertainment. He did not hesitate to point out where the Muslims had gone wrong in history, but at the same time, he showed the way of how to get out of this situation. He expounded the concept of khudi in order to achieve their objective. He wrote, this is in Urdu, "खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा के." Translation is, elevate your self-respect to such a degree that before any other consideration, Allah Himself asked His servant, "Tell me, what is it that you desire?" If other poets, and there was no shortage of them, prattled about the pleasures of wine and women, Iqbal brought the lofty ideals of Islam. He reminded them of what their great descendants had achieved with so few material possessions at their disposal. It was their self-confidence, determination, and spirit of sacrifice that enabled them to achieve such great feats. The conquest of North Africa in 682 AD by the great Muslim general Uqba ibn Nafi is one such episode. When there was no more land to conquer, Uqba, sitting atop his horse, rode into the Atlantic Ocean. Then looking towards the sky, history tells us he said, "O Allah, if there were more land, this humble servant of yours will conquer that as well." Iqbal wrote about this episode in the following stirring couplet. I'll say the translation. What of the deserts? We did not leave even the rivers and seas. We plunged our horses into the sea of oppression. While Iqbal's message was addressed to all the Muslims of the world, whether in Palestine, Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, or Arabia, his message was specifically directed towards the Muslims of India. In his Jawab-e-Shikwa response to the lament, one of his most outstanding poems, Iqbal reminds Muslims of the secret of securing Allah's pleasure. Translation: if you are truly faithful to Muhammad ﷺ, then we, meaning Allah, is with you. What is this world? The entire universe is yours. The concept of khudi was envisioned and mobilized by Iqbal through his poetry and anti-colonial activism against the British colonialism in India. As a poet, philosopher, lawyer, and an anti-colonial visionary, Iqbal infused his poetry in Urdu and Persian with philosophical ideas which gave clarity of purpose and foundational strength to the voice of Indian Muslims. Anti-colonial struggle for freedom from British rule in India. The leader of the political party All India Muslim League, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, called Qaid-e-Azam, which means the great leader, he was the founder of Pakistan, was inspired by Iqbal's idea for freedom and a separate homeland for Indian Muslims, and together they gave rise to an anti-colonial movement against the British rule in India. Muslims of colonial India were living a life of servitude to their colonial masters. They were mostly uneducated, impoverished, and hopeless towards their future. In general, most Indians accepted and approved of British rule in the Indian subcontinent. Iqbal, through his poetry such as in Shikwa, Jawab-e-Shikwa, Masjid-e-Qurtaba, Mosque of Cordoba, Asrar-e-Khudi, reached out to his community to decolonize their minds and hearts and to instill a sense of self-respect and collective consciousness. His poetry and activism stimulated and mobilized Indian Muslims' anti-colonial struggle against the East India Company's rule and British rule in the Indian subcontinent. After a long history of sovereignty in their homeland and a glorious past, when philosophy, science, and arts were flourishing, Indian Muslim civilization had experienced significant losses. With little progress and lack of education as Europe modernized at the expense of its colonies, Muslims stood still. Iqbal denounced their practices and challenged them to confront their situation. He invoked their glorious past and conjured the images of a sovereign homeland while spotlighting their current aspiration. Iqbal's millat is a universal community of believers transcending all barriers of caste, color, race, nationality, and territory. This concept of his is linked with the pan-Islamic movement that was going on in subcontinent and other Muslim countries at that time. He advocates that like an individual, the community must live a life of constant struggle and ceaseless endeavor. He further says that the community has also its khudi, which has all the attributes of the individual ego. Vigor, force, power, determination, the will to rise and move forward, and courage to fight are the characteristics of the collective khudi of the community. He asked the Muslim world to consolidate the khudi for their development because without it, state and religion cannot exist. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much about khudi, but I'm really fascinated by this aspect of Dr. Iqbal. That's why. After discussing these concepts separately, Iqbal then establishes a relationship between the individual and community. He says that the community is a great blessing for the individual, which provides ample opportunities to the development of his heart and head. Similarly, community gets organization and strength from the individual. The individual exists as a part of society. Alone he is nothing. Translation of his verse is, a wave is a wave only inside the river, outside of it, it is nothing. As a philosopher, Iqbal was a deep thinker who wrestled with questions of modernity, spirituality, and the future of civilization. His lectures, compiled in the reconstruction of religious thought in Islam, are a testament to his belief in the adaptability of Islamic teachings to modern life. He believed that Islam, far from being rigid or outdated, contained within it the seeds of renewal and progress, if only its followers would embrace ijtihad, meaning independent reasoning. Iqbal challenged the intellectual stagnation that he saw gripping the Muslim world. He was a critic of blind imitation or taqleed and called for Muslims to reinterpret their faith in light of contemporary challenges. He sought a dynamic interaction between faith and reason, between tradition and innovation. Iqbal's vision was not limited to theological reform. He believed in the creation of a society where justice, equality, and moral integrity were paramount. In many ways, his philosophy laid the groundwork for a modern Muslim identity, one that is proud of its heritage but is also forward-looking. He believed in the potential of Islam to lead humanity towards a balanced civilization, one where material progress and spiritual fulfillment could coexist. Iqbal's vision extended beyond personal development, it was also political. He was one of the first thinkers to articulate the need for a separate homeland for Muslims in South Asia, which eventually led to the creation of Pakistan. But Iqbal's dream was not merely about political sovereignty, it was about the creation of a society that would embody Islamic values of justice, equality, and intellectual freedom. His vision of Pakistan was a nation that would serve as a beacon of light, not only for Muslims but for all oppressed peoples seeking dignity and self-determination. Iqbal sought to reform the Muslim identity and the wider Islamic world in order to deal with the Western challenge. He was deeply perturbed by the ideological domination of the East by the West in the political, cultural, and social spheres. His political and economic perceptions, as indicated in his poem, seek to revive the self-confidence and creativity in the Muslim Ummah. Iqbal exhorts the Muslim to realize their identity and selfhood to confront the Western challenge. All in all, Iqbal's philosophy reveals an eclectic mixture of Islamic modernism, anti-imperialism, pan-Islamism, and a desire for a socially equitable society within an Islamic framework. Among his many great contributions, Dr. Iqbal will be remembered most for making Muslims realize their distinct Islamic identity and instilling a sense of self-respect and dignity in them. Iqbal's messages of self-respect, unity, and intellectual courage are as relevant today as they were in his time. He urged people to transcend divisions, to seek common ground, and to unite for the common good. His life's work is a reminder that true leadership comes from the ability to inspire others to pursue a higher purpose. After a long period of ill health, Dr. Iqbal died in April 1938 and was buried in front of the Great Badshahi Mosque in Lahore. 2 years later, the Muslim League approved the historic Pakistan Resolution on 23rd March, which became a reality on 14 August 1947. He has been acclaimed as the spiritual father of Pakistan since he conceived the idea of Pakistan. And in his memory, Iqbal Day is celebrated every year by Pakistanis on 9 November. Just concluding few sentences. Ladies and gentlemen, in Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, we find the embodiment of a visionary leader, a poet whose words stirred the soul in a philosopher who dared to reimagine the future. His poetry is an anthem of self-realization, his philosophy a call for renewal, and his message one of hope, empowerment, and action. He teaches us that change begins with the individual, but its effects ripple through communities, societies, and nations. While Dr. Iqbal has admirers in all parts of the world, not merely in Pakistan, what he bequeathed to the Muslim Ummah through his stirring poetry, philosophy, and political analyses are a rich legacy that cannot be ignored and must never be forgotten. As we reflect on his legacy, let us remember Iqbal's words. Translation: You are an eagle in flight is your destiny. In Iqbal's poetry, you will repeatedly see the mention of eagle or Shaheen as he calls it. Let us strive to rise above our limitations, both as individuals and collectively. Let us take inspiration from Iqbal's call to embrace our potential, to challenge the status quo and to work towards a future marked by justice, progress, and unity. Perhaps Iqbal's greatest gift to future generations is his unyielding belief in the power of the individual to shape history. He famously said, "Sitaron se aage jahan," or being, which translates into "beyond the stars there are other worlds." He didn't believe in the same sky as the limit, but he asked Muslims to look beyond the stars. For Iqbal, the possibilities for human growth and achievement are limitless. I'll conclude my speech on this last line, and I think this is relevant to all people, in particular the young people. Dr. Iqbal encouraged the youth to dream, to explore, and to never settle for mediocrity. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you once again for arranging this evening.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allow me, on behalf of the Muslim University of Morogoro community, to thank the High Commissioner of Pakistan, His Excellency Siraj Ahmad Khan. One, for accepting our invitation to come and deliver the inaugural lecture of Muhammad Iqbal Memorial Lectures. Secondly, for the kind of lecture which he has delivered. And we hope he will grant us the honor of printing and publishing this lecture to allow members to digest it. And hopefully I will set an exam for them to see if they have understood it. Don't hold your breath, I will not set an exam. But secondly, I would like to take this opportunity to request His Excellency the High Commissioner of Pakistan to help us thank the Coordinator General of Comstock for the kind of support which this university received. Comstock is headquartered in Islamabad, and the Coordinator General of Comstock is Professor Dr. Muhammad Iqbal Chaudhry. It is through his initiative that this university has benefited a lot. Number one, you will remember last year we had what is known as the Comstock Distinguished Scholars Program in June last year, where Comstock allowed us to invite distinguished scholars, world-class scholars from anywhere in the world to come to our university and do some kind of capacity building. We were privileged to get two professors, one Professor Amina Anak from Indonesia, and Professor Ahmad from Malaysia, in the fields of physics and chemistry. But it was through Comstock. They paid for their travel and their full board when they came here. And through that initiative, the universities have benefited a lot by opening up now a way for us, our staff, to go and study in Indonesia. Number two, Comstock also helped us through what is known as the Comstock Fellowship Program for research and training. This one was for advanced training in virology and vaccine technology. Again, this university was a beneficiary. One staff from us went now to Indonesia to do this kind of study, which is very rare. And only 12 people were supposed to be on board in this kind of program. in the world, and Muslim University was one of the beneficiaries. And again, it was through Comstate. Otherwise, they would not have been on board. So please convey our thanks to Professor Dr. Muhammad Iqbal of Comstate and notify him that we thank him very much. The last one, I mean the immediate one on which it was through what is known as Pakistan International last year. This is a program where you would show a competition, world competition. People from all over the world go to Pakistan and deliver what they think they can do in entrepreneurship in different areas. Again, here, one of our students qualified. This student could not go because of problems of travel and so on. But Hussein Chans went, and I was one of them also. But I went for the Vice Chancellor's Rector's Conference. Now, what I want to say is that all this time we have benefited through Comstate, but not very much through the direct contact between our universities and the universities of Pakistan. Our university is now trying to get cooperation with the University of Lahore in the mass communication. They have made 3 or 2 Zoom meetings, but somehow we are getting, I mean, the response is not very forthcoming from our universities in Pakistan, and we would like to, so please help us at least to establish this kind of link with the universities in Lahore. But for me, one who I represented in Pakistan, I have told you several times, but now I want to repeat here, for the kind of supreme hospitality of the people of Pakistan. And I will never forget the culinary delights of Lahore. You can never be able to divide your stomach in 3 parts. The kind of food which is delivered, and the people as a whole. And so finally, I would like to request you, if it's possible, to help us get people go to Pakistan and study, especially in the field of science, which we rarely get people to sponsor. And in Pakistan, from my visit, I witnessed so many investments in ICT. They're very good, and basic sciences and medicine. So if you can help get support in that area, that would be so much for us. And you may also, if it pleases you, Your Excellency, to send our regards also to His Excellency Sheikh Naz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that we are following the events in Pakistan, and we hope with this kind of memorial lectures, this kind of understanding between the people of Tanzania and Pakistan will continue. With these remarks now, I want to say this marks the end of our inaugural memorial lecture for this year, and hopefully we shall continue in the next years. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.